can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard His Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. It's a blessing to be here today. And the name of our message today is called, Am I My Brother's Keeper? Now, I thought about calling this message, Don't Be a Hater. I also thought about calling it Gratitude, Beatitude, and the Beatitudes. But I decided to stay with this title because sometimes I think we have a tendency to forget about our obligation to watch out and take care of one another. We suffer from tremendous pressure from Satan's advocacy group known as the world. And without one another, our chances of survival go way down. We must be strong and courageous, amen? But in addition to that, if we're going to defeat the schemes of the devil, we must, yes, put on the armor of Elohim, the complete armor of Elohim, but we must pull together and watch out for each other as we build our own part of the wall. We can't stand if we don't stand together, amen? All right? Not for long anyway. Sometimes we get too focused on stuff so that we aren't taking care of one another like we should. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 4. Bereshit chapter 4. I'll be reading from the 1998 ISR version today. We're going to be on page 4. And we're going to start reading in verse 1. Bereshit chapter 4, verse 1. And Adam knew Hawa, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have gained a man from Yahweh. And again she gave birth to his brother Abel. And Abel became a keeper of sheep, but Cain became a tiller of the ground. And it came to be in the course of time that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Yahweh. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And Yahweh looked to Abel and his offering, but he did not look to Cain and his offering. And Cain was very wroth, and his face fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, Why are you wroth? And why is your face fallen? If you do well, is there not acceptance? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should master it. And Cain told Abel, his brother, and it came to be when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. And Yahweh said to Cain, Where is Abel, your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's guard? Now, the KJV here says keeper. But the ISR, I think, is really using a better translation for the word here. The word is shamar. And Strong says that it's a primitive root, properly to hedge about, as with thorns, that is, guard, generally to protect, attend to, etc. It's the same word that's used when Yahweh says, you shall shamar, guard to do all that I command you. And when it says, shamar, the month of Abib, you shall guard the month of Abib, it means to protect and to watch out for, to be careful and to observe, etc. Verse 10, and he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground, and now You are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the root of Cain's problem was selfishness and self-centeredness. That's what his problem was. Now, Yahweh said in verse 6 and 7, it says, And Yahweh said to Cain, Why are you wroth, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, is there not acceptance? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should master it. In other words, why are you mad? It's nobody's fault but your own, Cain. I'll accept you if you do what's right. But that is your responsibility to rise above the temptation and fall into transgression. You see, Cain brought some of what he had, but Abel, he brought of his first fruits and gave that to Yahweh. Cain put himself first and Yahweh second, and Abel put Yahweh first and himself second. Selfishness and self-centeredness was Cain's problem. But he was not able to master it, as Yahweh said. He rose up, he killed his brother, evidently driven to some extent by anger that he was experiencing when Yahweh asked him about why was he mad. So, Cain answers Yahweh with a lie and a sneer. Verse 9 says, Yahweh said to Cain, Where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's guard? I just can't hardly see talking to Yahweh like that. Another way of saying that is, I don't know. Am I supposed to be keeping an eye on my brother? Or, I don't know. Is it my job to watch out for my brother? There's not a lot of concern for his brother in those words, is there? Do you know what the answer to that question should be? It should be, yes. I should be my brother's guard and take care of him as I would want him to take care of me. We should ask ourselves that very same question. Not with a sneer, but introspectively. Am I being more like Cain, not regarding my brother, or am I my brother's guard? When we men come to present ourselves 3 times in a year to Yahweh, that's one of the things that we need to be doing a personal inventory on. Am I guarding my brother as I should be? And I would add that when you ask if you're guarding your brother as you should be, that you remember that your brother extends to his wife and children and parents and any other members of the family that he has with him. And I would point out that his children are our little brothers and sisters too. And ladies, this is something that we all need to be asking ourselves. Am I being more like Cain, or am I being more like Yeshua? Now, what did Yeshua say was the great command in the Torah? Love Yahweh, right? Love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your being, with all your might, and with all your mind. What is the second great command which he likened to the first one? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I want to look at the passage from which that comes, but I want for us to notice what's being said right along with it. So turn with me to Leviticus chapter 19, YHWH 19. Leviticus 19, we're going to start reading in verse 17, be on page 125. It says, do not hate your brother in your heart. That's why I was going to call it, don't be a hater. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him, and do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Do you see that? All of this is connected here. It's showing love to your brother and to the children of your people, in regards to your neighbor too. This passage does not bring the brother lower, but rather it brings the neighbor up. Sometimes the neighbor is your brother and sometimes he's not. Let's look at Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. I'm going to start reading on verse 25 on page 995. Luke 10, verse 25. And see, a certain one learned in the Torah stood up, trying him and saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit everlasting life? And he said to him, What's been written in the Torah? How do you read it? And he answering said, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly. Do this and you shall live. But he answered, wishing to declare himself righteous, said to Yahshua, And who is my neighbor? And replying, Yahshua said, A certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among robbers, who both stripping and beating him, went away, leaving him half dead. And by a coincidence, a certain priest was going down that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite also, when he came to the place, and seeing, passed on the other side. Now, Yahshua is relating to this Jewish gentleman about Jewish people who he should recognize as brothers, certainly priests and Levites, okay? But a certain Shamarinite, a Samaritan, verse 33. Now, the Samaritans, which is interesting that Yahshua would bring this into this parable here. The Samaritans were hated by the Jews. The Samaritans were people that had been translated from Babylon and other places by the Assyrians and put into the region there when Assyria had been doing the transplant between the two regions. And lions had come in and were attacking the people, the transplants that were there in Samaria. And the Assyrian king sent a priest down there to teach those people the Torah, because he said, the Elohim of that land is causing this to happen, so because he's not being served. So he sent a priest down there to teach them Torah. And the Samaritans had their own version of the Torah, and the Jews hated the Samaritans because they didn't believe they should be there. All right? Interesting. This is an interesting thing too. The Samaritan Torah would have had that part in there about, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's interesting, isn't it? All right, so he says, but a certain Samaritan, Shamarinite, journeying came upon him, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. That's one of Yahweh's characteristics there, isn't it? And he had compassion on him. And he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and having placed him on his own beast, he brought him to an inn and looked after him. And going out on the next day, he took out 2 pieces of silver, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, Look after him, and whatever more you spend, I shall repay you when I return. Who then of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the robbers? Now, we've talked about this before, but this Jewish gentleman that's wanting to be declared right, he could not bring himself to say the Samaritan. He couldn't even say the Samaritan, it says. And he said, he who showed compassion on him. Then Yahshua said to him, Go and do likewise. This is certainly an example on the Samaritan's part of selflessness. Amen? it's not likely that the Samaritan might hope to gain anything from shelling this money out to someone who might not even have the means to pay him back. But this is exactly the example that YHWH came up with to demonstrate who our neighbor could be. Because the Jews did not think highly of the Samaritans at all. Can you think of some folks that you might not think highly of? But if we were to go and do likewise and show compassion on our neighbors, how much our brothers and sisters, if we love them as we love ourselves, that is. Now, sometimes we see that our brothers or our sisters need to do better with something, this thing or that thing. How should we handle it? Well, first of all, if we are loving others as we love ourselves, we should think about how we might feel if we were on the receiving end. Okay? That's important. Turn with me to Proverbs Chapter 12. We're going to go through a few Proverbs here. We're going to start, we're just going to read one verse here in Proverbs 12. Page 737. Proverbs 12:1 says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is," what's that next word? Stupid. That's bad. But it gets worse. Proverbs 15. Verse 10. "Discipline is grievous to him who forsakes the way. He who hates reproof dies." See, that's worse than stupid. Verse 17 of 15. "Better is a meal of vegetables where love is than a fatted calf with hatred." And so we need to handle things with love. In 16 verse 2. "All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the spirits." Having said this, we need to do a little self-analysis before we go to our brother or sister. Amen? All right. Now, look at Matthew chapter 7. Matthew 7, we're going to start reading verse 3. Page 923. Matthew 7, verse 3. YHWH says, "And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Or how is it that you say to your brother, 'Let me remove the splinter out of your eye,' and see, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to remove the splinter out of your brother's eye." It does not say to help your brother's splinter. It says when you have the plank out of your own eye, when you can see clearly to remove the splinter, then remove it from your brother's eye. Don't tell your brother how to handle money, in other words, when you can't pay your own bills. Okay? Don't tell your brother why he needs to practice physical fitness when your example of physical fitness is how many pull-ups you can do to the table. Sometimes people see that their brothers or their sister needs to do better, but they want the preacher to handle the situation. Yeah, they sure do. What's that? It's not loving your pastor as yourself. Love your brother or sister enough to talk to them about it. Now, just because we talk to another person about another person's problem, that doesn't mean that it's gossip. All right? It's only natural to talk to another person about a perceived situation. All right? We want to either be validated in our assessment, or we want to get a proper perspective, and you might need to seek some counsel before taking action. But once you have been validated and you do have the plank out of your own eye, don't let it turn into gossip. All right? Prayerfully make a plan of action and go and bring it to the person. Matthew 5, verse 1. Matthew 5, verse 1. But when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his taught ones came to him. And having opened his mouth, he was teaching them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, because theirs is the reign of the heavens. Blessed are those who mourn, because they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, because they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they shall be filled. Blessed are the compassionate, because they shall obtain compassion. Blessed are the clean in heart, because they shall see Elohim. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they shall be called sons of Elohim. Blessed are those persecuted for righteousness' sake, because theirs is the reign of the heavens. Blessed are you when they reproach and persecute you and falsely say every wicked word against you for my sake. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward in the heavens is great. For in this way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned? For it is no longer of any use to be thrown out. Let me start over there. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned? For it is no longer of any use but to be thrown out and to be trodden down by men. You are the light of the world. It is impossible for a city to be hidden on a hill, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it shines to all those in the house. Let your light so shine before men, so that they see your good works and praise your Father who is in the heavens. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly, I say to you, till the heavens and the earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so, he shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. You heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is wroth with his brother without a cause shall be liable to the judgment, and whoever says to his brother, Rakah, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. But whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the fire of Gehenna. If then you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there before the altar, and go first make peace with your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Okay? So even in all this right here, we see Yahshua coming back and telling us how we are to deal with our brother. But what about when our brother sins against us? Let's turn to Matthew 18. And we're going to be starting in verse 15. Did you know that reproof doesn't have anything to do with being hateful? It doesn't. Reproving someone does not mean being ugly to them. Matthew 18:15. And if your brother sins against you, go and reprove him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. That means that you've worked things out. But if he does not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of two or three witnesses every word might be established. What do you think this is talking about? Is it talking about being right, or is it talking about having a reunion? It's talking about having a reunion. It's talking about reconciliation. Verse 17. And if he refuses to hear them, say to the assembly. And if he refuses to hear the assembly, let him be to you like a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I say to you, Whatever you bind on earth shall be having been bound in heaven, and whatever you loosen on earth shall be having been loosened in heaven. Again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning any matter that they ask, it shall be done for them by my Father in the heavens. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in their midst. Then Kepha came to him and said, Master, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Now, we're going to look also in the book of Luke about this moment here that takes place, because there's a point to be made there. But in Luke, Yeshua says if he repents, you'll forgive him 70 times. So many of us were taught that we have to forgive each and every offense, no matter how grievous that offense is. And if you do not forgive others, then neither will your Father in heaven forgive you. What Yeshua is going to do next is he is going to share a parable with us about how Yahweh does forgive us and how he expects us to do the same way. Verse 22. Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but to 70 times 7. Because of this, the reign of the heavens is like a certain man, a sovereign, who wished to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was unable to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. Then the servant fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me. I wonder if Yeshua expects us to have patience with one another. And I shall pay you all. Have patience with me, and I shall pay you all. And the master of the servant was moved with compassion. There's that word again. Released him and forgave him the debt. And that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 pieces of money. Now that's a lot less money. And if it wasn't for guys like that, I wouldn't have been in the mess that I was in, and the master about to throw me in prison, right? I don't know if that's what's going through his head or not. But the servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 pieces of money, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I shall pay you all. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? But he would not, and he went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. And when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were deeply grieved and came and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master called him and said to him, Wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt, seeing you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, as I have also had compassion on you? And his master was wroth and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So also my heavenly Father shall do to you, if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. So let me ask you this. Does Yahweh forgive unrepentance? No. But he is faithful to forgive us when we do repent. Amen. All right. We must forgive one another in the same way. It's not an option. All right. Luke chapter 17. We're on page 1004. I'm going to start reading verse 1. Luke 17, verse 1. And he said to his taught ones, It is inevitable that stumbling blocks should come, but woe to him through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone was put around his neck, and he were thrown into the sea, than that he should cause one of these little ones to stumble. Take heed to yourselves. If your brother sins against you, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day comes back to you saying, I repent, you shall forgive him. And the emissary said to the master, Give us more belief. And the master said, If you have belief as a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. But who of you, having a servant plowing or shepherding, would say to him when he has come in from the field, come immediately and sit down to eat? But would you not rather say to him, prepare somewhat for my supper, and gird yourself, and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterwards you shall eat and drink? Would he thank the servant because he did what he was commanded? I think not. Let that sink in just a little bit. Would he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? I think not. So also you, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, we are unworthy servants. We have done what was our duty to do. We should not expect extra points for forgiving when a brother repents and we forgive him. Okay? We shouldn't expect extra points for that. We should go to Yahweh and say, or we shouldn't go to Yahweh and say, well, I'm doing pretty good here. Am I not? Am I moving up the ladder a little bit? What do you think? We should say, I'm an unworthy servant. I have done what is my duty. How many other people in here have ever been forgiven for things? How many people in here have ever been forgiven by other people for things? We should not expect extra points when a brother or sister repents and we forgive them. Matthew chapter 25. We're going to start reading in verse 31, page 948. Matthew 25:31. And when the son of Adam comes in his esteem, and all the set apart messengers with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem. And all the nations shall be gathered before him, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the sovereign shall say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the reign prepared to you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous shall answer him and say, Master, when did we see you hungry, and we feed you, or thirsty, and give you to drink? And when did we see you a stranger, and took you in, or naked, and clothed you? And when did we see you sick, or in prison, and we came to you? And the sovereign shall answer and say to them, truly, I say to you, and so far as you did it one to the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. He shall then also say to those on the left hand, go away from me, accursed ones, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his messengers. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. I was naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also shall answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not serve you? And then he shall answer them, saying, truly I say to you, and so far as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into everlasting life. So we can see that when we are loving our neighbor as ourselves, especially the least, that Yahweh regards that as to him. And when we do not love our neighbors, especially the least, then Yahweh regards that as him as well. Now, part of loving our neighbor as ourselves is bearing one another's burdens. Amen? So let's look at part of that. Galatians chapter 6. Galatians 6, we're going to be on page 1131. We're going to start reading in verse 1. Galatians 6, verse 1. Brothers, if a man is overtaken in some trespass, you, the spiritual ones, set such a one straight in a spirit of meekness, looking at yourselves. That's kind of like getting the board out of your own eye. All right? Looking at yourselves, lest you be tried too. Bear one another's burdens, and so complete the Torah of the Messiah. So how do we bear one another's burdens? Well, there are lots of ways. Sometimes it's being a counselor for our brothers and sisters. Sometimes it's being a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen. Sometimes it's visiting the lonely or taking care of the sick or the elderly. Sometimes it's helping one another with our children. Anybody here ever get worn down by your children? Now listen, moms in particular, all right, dads, most of the time, dads can bug out. Mom's got that kid all day long, those children all day long. She can't even go to the restroom without, Mom, Mom. Or she might think she's able to sit down for a little while and things are nice and quiet. And things are nice and quiet, and you think that baby's laying down taking a nap, and then something makes you get up and go in there and look, and there's paint all over the carpet and all over the dresser, and all that kind of stuff, okay? So moms don't get away much. Reach out to parents sometimes. That's a way you can help one another's burdens. If somebody's, ask someone, can I take care of the kids while y'all go for go out to get a meal tonight, have some quiet time together or something like that? It may take you a few weeks to get over it, but still, that may set you over there on the right side instead of the left side. Sometimes we need to clothe the naked. We have a friend that we just lost that we discovered that she would find coats that would be in houses where people had moved out, and she would keep them in the vehicle with her. And when she would see someone who needed a coat during the wintertime, she'd have them on hand to help people. I'd never thought of doing that. I'm thinking that's probably not going to be a bad idea, Sometimes we need to clothe the naked, visit people in the hospital and in prison. There are all sorts of places where we can be our brother's keeper, because none of us can do it all ourselves. 1 Corinthians 13. Going to be on page 1112. Going to start reading in verse 1. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1. If I speak with the tongues of men and of messengers and do not have love, I have become as a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophecy and know all secrets and all knowledge, and if I have all belief so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm none at all. And if I give out all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I give my body to be burned, but do not have love, I am not profited at all. Love is patient, is kind, love does not envy, love does not boast, is not puffed up, does not behave indecently, does not seek its own, is not provoked, reckons not the evil, does not rejoice over the unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Love never fails, and whether there be prophecies, they shall be inactive, or tongues, they shall cease, or knowledge, it shall be inactive. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I did away with childish matters. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now, I know in part, but then I shall know, as I also have been known, and now belief, expectation, and love remain, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Are we being patient with our brothers and sisters as we guard them? Do we envy or do we celebrate? Do we act indecently or do we take care of them? Do we seek our own or do we seek to help our brothers and sisters? Our last passage today is 1 John chapter 3. We're going to start reading verse 10, so we'll be on page 1186. First John 3, verse 10. In this, children of Elohim and the children of the devil are manifest. Every one not doing righteousness is not of Elohim, neither the one not loving his brother. Because this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Not as Cain, which is interesting because that's who we started out with. Not as Cain, who was of the wicked one and killed his brother. And why did he kill him? Because his works were wicked, but those of his brother were righteous. Do not marvel, my brothers, if the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. The one not loving his brother stays in death. Everyone hating his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has everlasting life staying in him. By this we have known love, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his tender affections from him, how does the love of Elohim stay in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Amen. And by this we know that we are of the truth, and shall set our hearts at rest before him, that if our heart condemns us, Elohim is greater than our heart and knows all. Beloved ones, if your heart does not condemn us, we have boldness towards Elohim. And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight. And this is his command, that we should believe in the name of his Son, Yeshua Messiah, and love one another as he gave us command. And the one guarding his commands stays in him, and he in him. And by this we know that he stays in us by the Spirit which he gave us. So I ask again, do we want to be like selfish Cain or selfless Yeshua? Right? And so to the question, am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's guard? Am I supposed to make him my business? Am I supposed to look out for him or her? Am I supposed to bear his or her burdens with them? Am I supposed to keep an eye on their family? Am I supposed to watch out so that he does not fall into harm or transgression? The answer needs to be yes. If I am my brother and sister's keeper, and especially if you're loving him and her as yourself. Yavarokeka Yahweh va'ishmareka ya'er Yahweh panabaleka v'kaneka yasa Yahweh panabaleka v'yasem lakah shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you his complete contentment.
Hey, hey, and he can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana.